A prestigious law firm interviewing prospective attorneys had narrowed the field down to Bob and Paul. Both had graduated at the top of their respective law school classes. Both were from good families. Both were equally handsome. Both were well-spoken. But the senior law partner only asked each man one question. "Why did you become a lawyer?" And then chose Bob. Later, Paul said to Bob, "I can't understand why he didn't want me." When he asked me why I became a lawyer, I told him that I had the greatest respect for the law, that I'd lay down my life for the Constitution, and that all I wanted was to do the right thing for my clients. "What did you say?" Bob replied, "I just told him I became a lawyer because of my hands." "Your hands?" asked Paul incredulously. "Yeah," said Bob. "One day I looked at my hands and there wasn't any money in either of them." One day before the king goes to war, he locks his wife, the beautiful queen, in the room and gives the key to his best friend and says, "If I am not back within 4 days, open the room and she is yours." He sits on his horse and hits the road. Half an hour later, he notices a dust cloud and sound behind him. He stops and sees his friend riding very fast towards him. "What's wrong?" King asks. Out of breath, his friend answers, "It is the wrong key." Two old men are sitting on either end of a park bench. On one side, the old man is quietly reading his newspaper. On the other end of the bench, that old man is pantomiming fishing. He takes out an imaginary worm, baits an imaginary hook, casts out with his imaginary rod, and slowly reels in the imaginary line. He then unhooks an imaginary fish, drops it in an imaginary bucket, and then starts the whole process over. After a while, a policeman comes up to the pair. The man reading the paper nearly folds it and greets the officer. The officer says, "Hey fella, is your buddy okay?" Some of the other park goers are a little worried about his behavior. "Oh, don't pay any mind to Charlie," says the old man. "He lives over at the home, and I try to get him some fresh air from time to time. He's harmless. He always enjoyed fishing. And now that his mind ain't what it used to be, he reverts back to what made him happy. But I reckon we have been out here a while. I'll get him back home." "All right, I'll know next time I see you guys at the park not to worry," says the officer. "Be safe getting back." "Will do," responds the old man. "Looks like the wind is picking up." With those final words, the old man begins fiercely rowing. The teacher says to her class, "All right, children, time for a quick quiz. Does anyone know what the word contagious means?" Little Sarah puts up her hand and says, "If someone is sick, they are contagious." "Good, Sarah. Anyone else?" "What about you, Sean?" says the teacher. Sean, the Irish kid, says, "All right, miss. Our neighbor is painting the outside of his house with a 2-inch paintbrush. My dad reckons it's going to take that ages." A man and his wife were awakened at 3 a.m. by a loud pounding on the door. The man got up and went to the door where a drunken stranger, standing in the pouring rain, was asking for a push. "Not a chance," said the husband. "It is 3 o'clock in the morning." He slammed the door and returned to bed. "Who was that?" asked his wife. "Just some drunk guy asking for a push," he answered. "Did you help him?" she asked. "No, I did not. It's 3 a.m. in the morning and it's pouring rain out there." "Well, you have a short memory," said his wife. "Can't you remember about 3 months ago when we broke down and those two guys helped us? I think you should help him, and you should be ashamed of yourself. God loves drunk people too, you know." The man did as he was told, got dressed, and went out into the pounding rain. He called out into the dark, "Hello, are you still there?" "Yes," came back the answer. "Do you still need a push?" called out the husband. "Yes, please," came the reply from the dark. "Where are you?" asked the husband. "Over here on the swing," replied the drunk. A lumberjack, a butcher, and a lollipop lady are walking through the woods, hungry and tired. They spy a run-down-looking cottage which looks uninhabited, so they decide to stay there for the night. The lumberjack goes in first to explore, and as he's looking around, a witch comes out from nowhere. She asks him, "What is your profession?" So the lumberjack tells her, "I'm a lumberjack," to which the witch takes a huge axe and chops his legs off. Hearing the scream, the butcher runs in to find the witch, who asks him, "And what is your profession?" The butcher tells her, "I'm a butcher," to which the witch takes a huge cleaver and chops his legs off. The lollipop lady has seen all this through the window, so she rushes in. The witch asks her the same question, and she replies, "I'm a lollipop lady. You're going to have to s*** my legs off." Two elderly gentlemen from a retirement center were sitting on a bench under a tree when one turns to the other and says, "Slim, I'm 83 years old now, and I'm just full of aches and pains. I know you're about my age. How do you feel?" Slim says, "I feel just like a newborn baby." "Really? Like a newborn baby?" "Yep, no hair, no teeth, and I think I just wet my pants." While showing off his new apartment to friends one night, a drunk man led the way to his bedroom, where there was a huge clock on the wall with a big brass gong. "What's that brass going for?" asked one of the guests. "Why, that's the talking clock," the man replied. "How does it work?" asked a second friend. "Watch," the man said, giving it an ear-shattering pound with a hammer. Suddenly, someone on the other side of the wall screamed, "For heaven's sake, you it's 2 a.m. in the morning." A man who smelled like a distillery flopped on a subway seat next to a priest. The man's tie was stained, his face was plastered with red lipstick, and a half-empty bottle of gin was sticking out of his torn coat pocket. He opened his newspaper and began reading. After a few minutes, the disheveled guy turned to the priest and asked, "Say, Father, what causes arthritis?" "Mister, it's caused by loose living, being cheap, too much alcohol, and a contempt for your fellow man." "Well, I'll be the drunk muttered, returning to his paper. The priest, thinking about what he had said, nudged the man and apologized. "I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to come on so strong. How long did you have arthritis?" "I don't have it, Father. I was just reading here that the Pope does." A curious little boy looked up at his blonde mom and asked, "Mom, do you pee when you sleep?" His mom smiled and replied, "No, honey, I don't." "Why do you ask?" With a puzzled expression, the boy leaned in and whispered, "Then why does Dad always take off your pajamas when you're sleeping?" After being married for 40 years, I took a careful look at my wife one day and said, 40 years ago, we had a cheap house, a junk car, slept on a sofa bed, and watched a 10-inch black and white TV. But I got to sleep every night with a hot 23-year-old girl. Now, I have a $1 million home, a $50,000 car, a nice big bed, and a large screen TV. But I'm sleeping with a 63-year-old woman. It seems to me that you're not holding up your side of things. My wife is a very reasonable woman. She told me to go out and find a hot 23-year-old girl, and she would make sure that I would once again be living in a cheap house, driving a junk car, sleeping on a sofa bed, and watching a 10-inch black and white TV. Aren't older women great? They really know how to solve an old guy's problems. Banter is a government employee. One day, out of boredom, he decides to see what's in his old filing cabinet. He pokes through the contents and comes across an old brass lamp. This will look nice on my mantelpiece, he decides, and takes it home with him. While polishing the lamp, a genie appears and grants him 3 wishes. I wish for a beautiful castle right now. He gets one. Now that he can think more clearly, he states his second wish. I wish to be on an island where beautiful nymphs reside. Suddenly, he is on an island with gorgeous females eyeing him lustfully. He tells the genie his third and last wish. I wish I'd never have to work ever again. Oops! He's back in his office again. At school, little Johnny's class is learning about medicines. Sister Catherine, the teacher, asks the pupils what kind of medicines they know and what they are used for. The first pupil said, Tylenol. Very good. And what is it used for? It is used for a headache. The second pupil said, Nitol. Excellent, said Sister Catherine. And what it is used for? To help you asleep, replied the student. Now it is Johnny's turn, and he said, Via. And what is it used for, Johnny? Asked the surprised Sister Catherine. It is used for diarrhea. And who told you this, Johnny? Nobody, but every evening my mother tells my father, take a and maybe that will get harder. Sister Catherine fainted. A man suffered a serious heart attack while shopping in a store. The store clerk called 911 when they saw him collapse to the floor. The paramedics rushed the man to the nearest hospital where he had emergency open-heart bypass surgery. He awakened from the surgery to find himself in the care of nuns at the Catholic hospital. A nun was seated next to his bed holding a clipboard loaded with several forms and a pen. She asked him how he was going to pay for his treatment. Do you have health insurance? She asked. He replied in a raspy voice, No health insurance. The nun asked, Do you have money in the bank? He replied, No money in the bank. Do you have a relative who could help you with the payments? Asked the irritated nun. He said, I only have a spinster sister and she is a nun. The nun became agitated and announced loudly, Nuns are not spinsters. The patient replied, Perfect. Send the bill to my brother-in-law. A bagpiper was asked by a funeral director to play at a graveside service for a homeless man who had no family or friends. The funeral was to be held at a cemetery in the remote countryside, and this man would be the first to be laid to rest there. As the bagpiper was not familiar with the backwoods area, he became lost. He finally arrived an hour late. He saw the backhoe and the crew who were eating lunch, but the hearse was nowhere in sight. He apologized to the workers for his tardiness, then stepped to the side of the open grave where he saw the vault lid already in place. He assured the workers he would not hold them up for long. But this was the proper thing to do. The workers gathered around, still eating their lunch. The piper played out his heart and soul. As he played, the workers began to weep. He played everything from Going Home and The Lord is My Shepherd to Flowers of the Forest, closing with Amazing Grace. He then packed up his bagpipe and walked back to his car. As he drove off, one of the workers said to another, "I have never seen nothing like that before, and I've been putting in septic tanks for 20 years.